Whitney Houston walked into the end of 1992, dropped one single, and made everyone else irrelevant for the next 14 weeks. This is The Main Pop Girl, the series where I crown the dominant female pop artist of every year from 1990 to now. And 1992, this is where we witness one of the most iconic moments in pop music history. But here's the thing. That iconic moment only lived in 1992 for 5 weeks. So does Whitney still win the year? Let's break it down. 1992 was a fierce battleground. Early in the year, Vanessa Williams had her massive, career-defining moment with Save the Best for Last. That song was a monster. 5 weeks at number 1, ended up as the number 4 song on the year-end chart. In any other year, this would have been remembered as the definitive ballad of 1992. Madonna snagged This Used to Be My Playground 1 week at number 1, number 21 on the year-end chart, but her year was defined by controversy. October 20th, she released Erotica. October 21st, The Sex Book dropped. The book sold 150,000 copies on its first day and over 1.5 million copies worldwide, becoming the fastest-selling coffee table book of all time. But that controversy overshadowed everything. Erotica debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, her first studio album since 1983 not to top the chart. But the real story of relentless, year-long excellence, that belonged to Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey spent 1992 proving she was undeniable. Can't Let Go peaked at number 2 and hit number 23 on the year-end chart. Make It Happen reached number 5 and landed at number 42. And then came I'll Be There, her cover of the Jackson 5 classic, which hit number 1 for 2 weeks and landed at number 16 on the year-end chart. 3 songs in the year-end Hot 100. That's consistency. But March 16, 1992 was the moment that changed everything for Mariah. Her MTV Unplugged performance.
You got me feeling higher.
Until then, critics whispered that her legendary vocals were just studio magic. The Unplugged performance silenced every last one of them. She showed her 5-octave vocal range, performed stripped-down version of her hits, and got rave reviews. The MTV Unplugged EP was released June 2nd and peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling 67,000 copies in its first week. In the UK, it also peaked at number 3 and went gold. Mariah was proving she was more than just a studio artist. She was a legitimate vocal powerhouse. And here's what's important about Mariah's 1992. It was a bridge year. She was coming off the historic 1991 where she scored her 5th consecutive number 1 single with Emotions, a record that still stands today. But 1992 was about setting up what was coming next. 1992 was consistent, professional, and it kept her in the conversation. But then November happened. On November 2nd, 1992, Whitney Houston released I Will Always Love You from the Bodyguard soundtrack. Now, the song wasn't new. It was written and recorded by Dolly Parton in 1973 as a tender country farewell to a former colleague. It hit number 1 on the country charts twice. But Whitney's version? That was something else entirely. This was Whitney's film debut, and they needed a lead single. The original plan was What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted, but when they discovered it was just used in another film, they pivoted. Kevin Costner actually suggested I Will Always Love You. Producer David Foster transformed it from a gentle country ballad into a soul-stirring pop epic. And the masterstroke? Having Whitney open the song a cappella. That solitary, powerful opening. Just Whitney's voice, vulnerable yet commanding.
If I should stay,
was sheer audacity. And then came one of the most iconic, earth-shattering key changes in music history. The song shot up the Billboard Hot 100 with terrifying velocity. By November 28th, it was number 1 in America. And the commercial performance was unlike anything the industry had ever seen. The song sold around 400,000 copies in a single week, a record at the time. The next week, it shattered its own record. By late December 1992, it was selling a jaw-dropping 632,000 copies a week. Hit subscribe for more unfiltered pop opinions. Those 5 weeks at number 1 in 1992 were just the beginning. I Will Always Love You would go on to spend 14 consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, a record at the time. The song stayed at number 1 throughout January and February 1993, making it the first time Billboard didn't rank a new number 1 single until March of a new year. It was the year-end number 1 single for 1993. The song topped the charts in 34 countries. In the UK, it spent 10 weeks at number 1. At the time, the longest run for a solo female artist in British chart history. It was officially named the best-selling single of 1992 in the UK, then made the year-end top 10 again in 1993 at number 9. The first time any musical act had the same single ranked in the top 10 2 years in a row. The song sold over 24 million copies worldwide, making it the best-selling single by a female artist of all time. In January 2022, it was certified diamond by the RIAA, over 10 million units sold in the US alone. And the Bodyguard soundtrack, released November 17, 1992, it debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, then blasted to number 1 the following week. It spent 20 non-consecutive weeks at number 1, and the soundtrack sold over 45 million copies worldwide. Still the best-selling soundtrack of all time. The following awards season was a coronation. Whitney won the Grammy for Record of the Year and Best Pop Vocal Performance. At the American Music Awards, she won Favorite Pop Rock Single and Favorite Soul R&B Single, the first time a solo female had ever swept both. In 2020, the Library of Congress selected Whitney's version for preservation in the National Recording Registry, deeming it a work of profound cultural and historical significance. Whitney's vocal performance on I Will Always Love You fundamentally shifted expectations for pop vocal performances. That control, that raw emotion, and the explosive climax. It set a new gold standard. It's the ultimate challenge for any singing competition contestant. It's the power ballad against which all others are judged. 3 decades later, it's more than a hit. It's a permanent fixture in our cultural lexicon. And she did this while conquering a completely new medium. The Bodyguard was her first film, and it was a box office success. Whitney proved she could dominate film and music simultaneously. She didn't just have a hit. She had a song that sold 24 million copies, a soundtrack that sold 45 million copies, a blockbuster movie, and a mountain of the most prestigious awards in music. We should mention the others who had moments in 1992. Celine Dion had Beauty and the Beast with Peabo Bryson reach number 9 in the UK and number 28 on the US year-end chart. If You Asked Me To also landed at number 28. Celine was beginning to build momentum that would explode in the mid-90s, but 1992 didn't belong to her. Janet Jackson dropped The Best Things in Life Are Free with Luther Vandross, a top 10 smash in the US and a number 2 in the UK. Janet was in transition after the global domination of Rhythm Nation 1814, keeping herself firmly in the pop consciousness while working on something that would later go on to dominate. And Vanessa Williams, as I mentioned, had the number 4 song of the year. That's legitimately impressive, but one massive song can't compete with what Whitney created. If you measure 1992 by steady, consistent success across 12 months, you'd have to give it to Mariah Carey. She was a constant presence throughout the year, proved her otherworldly vocal prowess beyond a shadow of a doubt with MTV Unplugged, and had 3 songs in the year-end charts. But if you measure it by controversy and cultural conversation, Madonna dominated. Erotica and Sex generated miles of headlines, even if they lacked the chart power of her previous releases. But pop music isn't just about consistency or controversy. It's about moments. It's about cultural resets. And in that regard, no one came close to Whitney Houston. The main pop girl of 1992 is Whitney Houston, and here's why. She didn't need 12 months to win. In the final 5 weeks of 1992, she unleashed a force of nature that completely rewrote the narrative. I Will Always Love You wasn't just another number 1 hit. It was an event that created a clear before and after. Yes, the song only spent 5 weeks at number 1 in the 1992 calendar year. Yes, the peak of its success extended into 1993, but the phenomenon was born in 1992. The Bodyguard was released in 1992. The cultural earthquake that would dominate the first quarter of 1993 started in December 1992. Those 5 weeks were the launch pad for a level of multi-platform dominance that was simply on another planet. Mariah had consistency and excellence. Madonna had controversy. But Whitney had a moment so powerful it made everyone else, no matter how legendary, no matter how consistent, completely and utterly irrelevant. She created the gold standard that every power ballad is judged against 3 decades later. She set a Billboard record that would stand for years. She conquered film and music simultaneously. Not everybody has that. Before November 1992, it was a competitive year filled with superstars. After, it was simply the year of Whitney Houston.